That's great. 𝗙𝗂𝗲𝗲𝗀𝗃, good evening everyone. It's a real pleasure to be on this Facebook Live focusing on Freeports, and welcome to my office here in Westminster, where we've had a very busy day. I started the day with a 90-minute debate in Westminster, which I led on Freeports, and I've had various meetings throughout the day. But it's my absolute pleasure to be here with Shanker Singh. I'm doing this Freeport Facebook Live. Now, I've been championing Anglesey being a Freeport since I was elected. So over 3 years, I set up and I chair the Anglesey Freeport Bidding Consortium, which is members of Stena and Bangor University and Coleg Menai and the North Wales Economic Ambition Board and lots of companies around the island. And I must say, the support that we have had across the island for our Freeport bid has been absolutely fantastic. And this is an opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. When I go around the island, lots of people come up to me and they say, look, what will a Freeport mean actually for me? What will it mean for my kids and my grandchildren? Is the Freeport Holyhead? Is it going to be the whole of the island? What sort of jobs are there going to be? What are the employment rights they're going to be? And what does this mean for our economy and our environment? So I'm hoping to do a Freeport Facebook Live session every week and answer any questions that you may have. Now today I've got Shanker Singh. We've been working together for the last 3 years, I think, Shanker, and he is a global trade expert. His latest book is called Trade, Competition and Domestic Regulatory Policy. It's coming out at the end of March, and he's the CEO of the company 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀 and a specialist in trade law and economic policy. And he's definitely part of the team that's been supporting the Freeport bid. So hopefully this gives you a flavour of what we'll be talking about today. Please do write any of your questions or email in. Happy to any questions in English or Welsh, whatever is your preferred language. And as many of you know, 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗃 𝗙𝗰𝗲 Cymraeg. I'm learning Welsh, but Shanker here doesn't speak Welsh yet. So we will answer your questions in English if that's okay. If you'd like an answer in Welsh, really happy to reply in Welsh, but we'll drop you an email with an answer after the event. We've only got 30 minutes, so we may not be able to answer every question, but we'll take note of all the questions, and we'll drop you a message if you give us your contact details. Now, we've got a few questions have actually come in already. You're all very organised, and the first question is, why do you think Anglesey will be a good place for a Freeport? Now, I'll answer, and then I think maybe Shanker could jump in. So the Conservative Party manifesto was to have Freeports right across the UK. We had 8 Freeports announced in the budget last year in March in England, and we've got 2 green Freeports in Scotland. There is going to be at least one in Wales. There are 3 bids, and these 3 bids were put in November last year, and those bids are the Cardiff Airport and also the Celtic bid. So 2 bids in the south, and we're the only bid in the north. And our bid is the whole of Anglesey, essentially 4 main sites, which is the Holyhead Port, Spark, and around Roscoff and Amloch in the north of the island. But it really will involve the whole of Anglesey. We should hear which bids are successful by early spring, and it's the UK government and the Welsh government will be making a decision. Now, they've been very clear. It's at least one in Wales. I'm a natural optimist, so I'm hoping that there'll be one in the south and one in the north. But maybe you'd like to add your thoughts on why Anglesey will be such a good Freeport, Shanker.
Yeah, thanks very much, Virginia. It's great to be here, and I apologise that I don't speak Welsh yet, but hopefully I will rectify that shortly. When we looked around at Freeports and Freeport policy in the UK, and we looked around at all of the different places, Anglesey and jumps out at you as an obvious place because it answers several problems. It solves several problems. One is the energy, the climate crisis that we have, and the ability. Anglesey obviously is known as Energy Island, so there's a lot that we could do in the energy space, and then also improving trade. It's a very significant trade corridor, Holyhead, Dublin, the route into Ireland, the route into Northern Ireland. I mean, this is a very important. In fact, many people don't realise that the port is actually the second biggest ro-ro port in the country. Only Dover is the only one that's bigger. And so the ability to put all of this together in a free port, Anglesey is the obvious place, actually, from my perspective.
Brilliant, thank you, Shanker. And Bogdan has asked a question regarding the infrastructure and what that will mean for the infrastructure of the island. I mean, clearly, it really depends on which companies invest. We've had 40 global companies have written letters of support for Anglesey to be a free port. They're looking to invest in Anglesey if it is actually a free port. They're not taking any investment from the rest of Wales. They specifically want to invest on Anglesey if we do get free port status. And those 40 companies, they range from the likes of Last Energy, who are an SMR company. We've got cabling companies, we've got Rolls-Royce, Airbus, a whole gamut of companies looking to invest on Anglesey. And I've been taking companies around the island over the last few years, and a lot of you have seen me. I've taken them for lunch at Blueberries, up towards the Roswell tank site. I've taken them to the Octel, and a lot of time has been spent at the old Anglesey aluminium site. We've got 213 brownfield site there. So there are a lot of companies looking at us, and if we can get free port status, they are looking to invest on the island, and they wouldn't be. This is not going to disadvantage anywhere else. One of the questions coming through has been the impact of the bridge, whether the impact of the Menai suspension bridge being closed for such a long period of time, and also that weight limit, that 7.5-ton weight limit on the bridge, and the fact that last week we had the Welsh Labour in Cardiff actually saying that there wouldn't be plans for a third bridge, whether that will actually affect us. Now, infrastructure and transport is vitally important, and as Shanker said, Holyhead is the second busiest roll-on, roll-off port in the UK, so it's vital that we do get links onto the island. But what I would say is, if we do get free port status, this is something that will definitely be looked at, because if we're trying to get all of this investment to the island, we certainly need to make sure that people can actually get to the island to actually invest in it. But I think one of the things that's important to say is we've got 24-hour deep water access, and the next closest port to that is Liverpool. Of course, Liverpool does have free port status, and I think there is the danger, if we don't actually get free port status, that we'll be seeing Liverpool take some of the business from the rest of North Wales. So I think that makes it even more imperative that we actually do get free port status. So Debbie's asked about how does Holyhead specifically help the companies I mentioned rather than any other free port like Liverpool. Well, one of the great things about Anglesey is we are known as Energy Island. We've got wind, wave, solar, tidal, hydrogen, and hopefully nuclear, if I've got anything to do with it. And the three things that in the Freeport bidding prospectus that were really important in the submission was that the Freeport had to demonstrate levelling up. Now, Anglesey has got one of the lowest GVA, gross value added, of any constituency in the UK. So any investment we can bring with good quality jobs will make a significant difference. The second, it had to be good employment practices, and average salaries had to be higher. And the companies, the 40 companies that I mentioned earlier, their average salary is around £57,000. And why are they so high? Is because they're based on innovation and tech. And that brings me to the third point. The Freeports have to demonstrate their contribution to delivering net zero, and of course the Welsh language. As we all know, no jobs, no Welsh language. And as I go around the island, young people say to me they want to be able to stay on the island, they want to be able to afford their own home, and it's important for our Welsh culture and the Welsh language that we have good quality jobs for these young people. So this Freeport will deliver that and will enable all of our young people to stay as part of their community.
No, I think you said it very well, Virginia. I mean, I think one thinks of infrastructure, as the physical infrastructure, the road, the bridges, etc., and that is important, and it will be important to Anglesey and to the Freeport going forward. But there's also other infrastructure. There's human infrastructure. There's making sure that people are educated so they can do the jobs that these investors are bringing. And one of our partners here on the Freeport is the Institute of Exports and International Trade, who actually will train. They're the UK's premier education arm for trade knowledge, and they will train young people to understand these trade processes, to be able to do the jobs that will be coming to Anglesey. So there's all kinds of different infrastructure here that we need to get right in order for this to be successful.
That's quite right, and that's why it's been critical for us to have Bangor University and Group Clentrid Menai and colleague Menai and all the schools really involved in this bid. And if we're going to be bringing jobs, we need to make sure our young people know that we're creating these jobs for them and for them to study and happily go away. But please come back, because we are actually going to need them. So Derry's asked a question: isn't Holyhead logistically disadvantaged being out on a limb? Now, we mentioned quite a lot about Holyhead being the second busiest ro-ro port in the UK, but it is a key port, and I think Shanker will explain about the land bridge and what it means for the trade.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. I mean, one of the reasons why it looks like it's out on a limb, if you look from the perspective of GB, I suppose, is actually its advantage. That's why it's so close to Dublin, and that's why that route from Dublin to Holyhead is a critical route for getting goods in trucks from Great Britain onto the island of Ireland, so of both Ireland and Northern Ireland. And that circuit of trucks and trade between the island of Ireland and Great Britain is a circuit, it's a circle, and all parts of it have to work in order for it to be successful. And one of the things we're planning here is a way of facilitating that Dublin-Holyhead route that makes it easier for people to use, and that will generate more trade and more economic activity between the island of Ireland and Great Britain, which is obviously absolutely key. We're obviously in the middle of the negotiations around the Northern Ireland Protocol. All of these things will help facilitate solutions to those problems, which is why there's a real need for this trade route to be facilitated.
Thank you. And we've got a question from Adam Bakewell, who's a student. He will be graduating shortly, and he's got many family members coming up to the working age. And how many jobs would this create for young people, and how will individuals like himself get trained up to take them? Well, in terms of the jobs, with all these companies that are looking to invest here, we've done some analysis, and we're looking at around 13,000 jobs being created over the next few years. Now, that's a significant number of new jobs will be created. And then in terms of the economic contribution, Shanker?
You're talking about £1 billion contribution to GVA. And I would say that one of our partners in the bid was an economics consultancy, 𝗧𝘂𝗲𝗲𝗃, whose track record actually on forecasting is one of the best in the country. And I would say that these numbers that we're talking about here are quite conservative numbers. I mean, a lot of it will depend on precisely how things roll out. There's lots of variables. You know, it's very hard to give you a hard number. But I would think that 13,000 jobs over the course of the next period and £1 billion in GVA uplift is on the conservative end of the spectrum, actually. And it could be a lot more than that. And it's not just going to be Anglesey, it's going to be the whole of North Wales that benefits from all of this. So there'll be lots of jobs for people in Anglesey, certainly, but there will also be jobs for people in North Wales. There will be jobs and economic activity for the whole region. And we've done probably 60 special economic zones around the world, and in the ones that work well actually attract investment that would not have come even to the country except for the Freeport, and that's what we're hoping to see here.
Thank you. And I can see lots of people I know. Adrian Edwards, the mayor of Holyhead, kindly watching. Sarah and Barbara, lots of other people. There's a question here from Beth Whitney. Hi, Beth. How will a free port potentially affect existing users of the port, including the cruise ships? Now, we have got a number of cruise ships have been visiting last year, and I know we've got lots and lots lined up for the next few years. It really is a great destination for these cruise ships. We want to make sure that people, when they come off the cruise ships, they actually don't just get on the bus and go to Carnarvon. We want to make sure that people, when they come off the cruise ships, they actually go to Holyhead, and they actually spend money on the island. And someone said to me recently, there used to be 2 Clark's shoe shops in Holyhead. Now, I've got 3 kids, so I know it must have been really, really bustling and really, really busy. So we want to make sure that Holyhead is a destination, and we had the £17 million from the Levelling Up bid from the UK government was successful, was announced a few weeks ago, when we had the the Welsh Minister, James Davies, came to celebrate with us. And that £17 million will be spent on regenerating Holyhead and creating a sense of pride and a sense of place. That will be looking at investing in the 𝗙𝗲𝗀𝗲 Centre, in terms of a tourism office, in terms of the play centre, 𝗧𝘂𝗲𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏 Church, and also down to Will Stewart's patch, which is the Breakwater Park. So we're looking to invest significantly in Holyhead, obviously for local people, but it'd be great if people coming off those cruise ships had a place where they could actually spend their money rather than just getting on a bus and leaving the island to look at other attractions in North Wales. Jenna, hi Jenna. So now we know that the third bridge is not going to be built. Will that make the Freeport less likely? Now I've talked a bit about that. What are your thoughts, Shanker?
Well, I think it increases the sense of urgency for, you know, pulling on every economic lever that you can in order to generate economic activity. Obviously, what will happen if the Freeport is successful and we get this investment into Anglesey is the demand for that connectivity will increase, and it will be carried by not only Stena, you know, who run and operate the Freeport, but, you know, many other people. So so I think you know, we'll see what happens in terms of connectivity, but there's no doubt that you need to have connectivity into the Freeport. These special economic zones that are successful in the world are successful because they're well connected to their local region. So we would have to have connectivity, you know, between the Freeport and the rest of the country.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. We'd like to do a big shout out to the Stag Inn who are watching. So hi everybody at the Stag Inn. I look forward to seeing you all soon. One of the questions, how likely is Anglesey to get a Freeport given the closeness to Liverpool and their bid? Now, of course, the 8 Freeports in England were announced last year in the budget last March. So England is a year ahead of us. And I would say the fact that Liverpool has got a Freeport, it makes it even more vital that we have a Freeport in North Wales. And that was certainly part of our bid submission in terms of the downsides of us not getting a Freeport are absolutely acute.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, so much of the trade from Ireland, from Northern Ireland to GB is actually carried on the Dublin-Holyhead route, probably 20% of it. If there's a storm in the Northern Irish Sea, it goes down to Dublin-Holyhead. One of the issues for Holyhead, I think, is if there are facilitations on, and trade is made easier between the direct routes, GB, Northern Ireland, so Liverpool, Belfast and so on, then what we're likely to see is diversion of trade potentially away. So that's why, again, it's really important that that North Wales is not put on a negative, disadvantageous footing with respect to Liverpool. And people need to have options. You know, you need to have lots of flexibility. Things happen that we could not possibly predict. You know, recently there was an avian flu outbreak in 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗀. No one would have suggested that it would cover the port of 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗀. So you couldn't then move any food products from 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗀 into Belfast, which was a major route. So you have to have lots of options, and this is one of them, one of the most important ones. And because Liverpool is a free port, it increases the urgency that Anglesey and Holyhead should be one as well.
And Barbara says Anglesey was mentioned so a lot in Parliament and in the media. We'll all benefit from getting a Freeport status. Thank you very much, Barbara. And actually, Penny Mordaunt, who I met this morning, she's Cabinet Minister and she does business questions on a Thursday. And she actually said to me this morning that I mentioned the Freeport so often on a Thursday, they've now called it Freeport Thursday. So certainly doing everything I can. Ken Jones says, who makes the ultimate decision and based on what criteria? Great question, Ken. Well, essentially, it's a joint decision between the UK government. It'll be Michael Gove in DLUC and also in terms of the Welsh government. So it's a joint decision by both governments. And in terms of the criteria, the bidding prospectus was very, very clear. It needs to level up an area, needs to make sure that there's really, really good quality jobs, needs to help with in terms of innovation and net zero, and of course support the Welsh language. So it's been very, very clear those criteria. And the bid team, Anglesey Council, working with Stena Line and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Grayling, they've worked for months and months and months actually on this bid, and a lot of hard work has gone into it. And I'm very confident that this is an excellent bid. I don't like to count my chickens before they hatch, but I'm really, really hopeful that we do have some good news over the next few weeks.
That's great.
So Robin, Robin, don't be fooled. This will turn Anglesey into the Wild West with zero regulation, and us locals will get nothing. Look up Freeports around the world to find out their impact. Well, I think, not surprisingly, Robin, we would disagree with that, but it's not the case. It's absolutely untrue that there will be zero regulations, and it's untrue that the locals will get nothing. The key message is that these are highly regulated, and the locals will be the ones that will absolutely benefit. There will be local jobs for local people, and this will be transformational for our economy on Anglesey.
It's a good question, Robin, though, because if you go back to Freeports, I know people think of them sometimes as, you know, Wild West places with no regulation and no labour standards and so forth, and you know, so that may have been true in the 1970s and possibly even early 1980s, but Freeports have changed dramatically around the world, and in fact now they tend to have better compliance, better transparency. You know much more actually about what's going on inside a Freeport or a special economic zone than you do sometimes the rest of the country. And certainly there is an absolute ironclad commitment to not just not lowering labour environmental standards, but improving them in the Freeport. And the Freeport's contribution to things like net zero is significant. If it's successful, we think we can reduce the emissions that would be required for a direct route from Dublin into the European continent by 20% by using the land bridge. So there are many benefits here. And in fact, we've been told by one of the investors, look, if there's a Freeport, if there isn't a Freeport, we'll pick up about 10% locally of the investment. In other words, that's the local content, the local jobs and so on. If there is a Freeport, we can pick up 50%. So that's the difference between lots of jobs for local people, lots of local content and local development. So the local development, local content is a key part of our bid, and that's one of the points that we sort of led with in the bid itself.
And then Michael Garner asked about what about SMR, small modular reactors, being built here. Now, of course, Anglesey is one of the 4 sites that's been identified by Rolls-Royce. But not only Rolls-Royce, there are many SMR companies that are interested in investing. I'm taking one, GE, around on Thursday afternoon. They're coming to the island. I've had Last Energy, lots and lots of SMR and nuclear companies like Bechtel and Westinghouse looking to invest on the island. Why? Because we've had 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀, and the island is very supportive in terms of getting new investment at 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗀. It's one of the best sites in the UK because it has got the skills on the island, it's got the support of the island, and also it has got the geology and the infrastructure to support that. So we're looking for probably a couple of big reactors at 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗀, but there's also room for 2, 3 or 4 small modular reactors to provide energy for not only Wales but the rest of the UK. But specifically relating to Freeports, one of the great things about a Freeport would be the likes of Rolls-Royce could bring in the raw materials for small modular reactors. These things are worth around £2 billion. They take around 800 people to build. So you could bring in the materials, put it together with 800 people, and then you could export it. And being as part of a Freeport, manufacturing within a Freeport would make you very, very competitive on a world stage. Now, we led in the nuclear sector in the 50s and 60s. We've got we've got small reactors, fusion, fission, we've got the fuel, we've got decommissioning. This is our opportunity to actually get back on the global stage and actually start exporting. So there's a real attraction to us having Freeport status to make us competitive on the global stage. Hi at the Stag. So a few of you wondering if there are any current plans for the area which the Freeport status could cover. 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗀, excellent question. Well, the key areas are going to be around the Holyhead Port, and around 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀 and up at Roscoff, the old tank site, which is owned by Conagra, and also in the north of the island around Amloch. Do you want to add to that?
And also so in the Freeports you have, it's not that the whole of Anglesey will suddenly become a customs site or a tax site. There are very specific sites within Anglesey that would be those things, and one of them is the customs site that would be on the old Anglesey aluminium land, which Stena actually owns now. So they've made a big commitment in that area, and what they want to do there is so Virginia talked earlier on about bringing manufacturing, bringing equipment, bringing plant in. You don't pay a tariff in the Freeport, and then you manufacture things there and you export them. It's made much more competitive, and you'd want to be doing that in the customs side. So that's what we're hoping for. We also, because of the role of the port, and Stena actually, very unusually actually, owns a lot of the sea bed around the port, we can actually create a blue innovation zone to test and trial some of the technology. We have the 𝗙𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗲 project, which is the biggest consented tidal project in the world. And there's going to be a lot of testing of how that can work better and so forth, and we can do that in the zone. So it's a really good connected site that's very well self-contained, and that's why we're quite excited about that. And I'll just say one other thing about, you mentioned the passengers and the cruise ships and so on. What tends to happen with these things is you get manufacturing, you get more jobs, more economic activity and so forth, and what comes with that? People need to eat, so you get restaurants, people need hotels, and all of that starts to come in, and that produces the places that people can actually go off the cruise lines. And you've got to think of this as a sort of ecosystem. You're creating a whole ecosystem that is a virtuous circle of economic development and activity.
Brilliant. I think we've got time for one more question. I think Abby has asked about the opportunities it could bring for young people is really what I'm interested in. There isn't enough to keep young people learning and earning on the island. This will be a massive step in the right direction for our kids. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Anglesey's got one of the lowest GVAs of any constituency in the UK, as I said earlier, gross value added, and we're very dependent on the hospitality and the tourism sector. Now, I love that sector. I finance going to sixth form and university in that sector, but it's very cyclical. We were the first sector to be hit by COVID and the last sector to recover. And I think it's really important that we do have good quality jobs. In terms of young people being able to afford their own home, I think what the real elephant in the room is how can people from England can come to the island and can buy their second home. We want to make sure that our young people on the island can buy their first home, and that means having good quality jobs with career progression and pensions. One of the reasons I fought for the inland border facility to be in Holyhead rather than in Warrington or Bryncagan was to make sure our young people had those excellent quality jobs, that they could have a career and have a future. So there certainly will be excellent jobs for people's children and young people. In terms of which sectors we'll anticipate will find Holyhead attractive. Well, I think if we look at the island known as Energy Island, and Shanker mentioned 𝗙𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗲𝗀𝗲𝗀𝗲, we've obviously got Monesto, we've got the Holyhead Hydrogen Hub. So quite clearly we are very focused on innovation, and we're very focused on net zero. So one would expect those are the sorts of companies that would be looking to invest. I'm very aware that we've probably got about 60 seconds left. What I would say is it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you tonight. Shanker, thank you very much for joining us. I'm looking forward to coming back to Holyhead, to my home on Thursday. I work here Mondays to Thursdays and sort of every other Friday. All the other time I'm based on the island. And if you have any more questions, please drop me an email in English or Welsh. I'd be really, really happy to respond. And we're hoping to do this every week until the Freeport decision is announced. So it's a really exciting few weeks. As I said, there are 3 bids, and there should be at least one in Wales. So, hopefully we're doing everything that we can. But this is where you can help. There is a website, 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗲.co.uk. Part of the submission is very much dependent on local support. So if you can go onto that website, 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗲.co.uk, you can find out much, much more. You can register your interest. There's some template letters that you can use to send to Vaughan Gething in the Senedd, and you can also send to UK government. And that engagement will really help us, and that will help us to bring investment and good quality jobs to Anglesey. And I'd wish you all a lovely evening, and look forward to catching up with you next week. Until next time, Tana Shanessa.
Thank you very much.